Welcome everybody. As you saw in the title, we're actually going to be taking a look at Code of Hero because as of the time this video drops, they just released Earthrise, which if you saw at the end of Earthrise, which spoilers in 3, 2, 1, Dinobot shows up at the very end. So what we're going to be doing today is I'm not going to just be on the camera the whole time. Basically we're going to be putting up a majority of the episode from Code of Hero while I read an article that basically is a breakdown of the episode. And so anyway, without further ado guys, let's get into it. Code of Hero would prove to be a big event that would change the direction and scope of the show's plot considerably. In the narrative impact, Code of Hero reached a height that could not be matched. Oh, also guys, before I continue on, this is this person's point of view, which they feel that Code of Hero is like the penultimate Beast Wars episode. I don't necessarily agree with that, but anyway, that's one thing I forgot, so back to this. This episode concludes Dinobot's character arc, which began in Maximal No More. For the first season, Dinobot's status as a Predacon turned Maximal did not gain significant traction until this arc in Season 2. Dinobot is facing deeper introspection and uncertainty of what the Beast Wars mean for the Predacon race, history at large, but also personally. This led to actions of some desperation, including an attempted return to the Predacons in hopes of finding answers. Code of Hero begins with Dinobot in his quarters, contemplating suicide. He's kneeling in a darkened room, brandishing his sword, quiet. The imagery is clear, even though it's never explicitly stated what he's doing here. He comes to such a point in his existential crisis that he's considering self-termination to finally be free of it all. This ties in some way to one of his own fears expressed earlier in the season, which foreshadows this. He says,
"If the future is indeed immutably foretold, then my demise is but moments from that confirmation, for I could not live if not the master of my fate."
Basically saying that he would take his own life rather than live according to some predetermined cosmic path. However, in the moment, Dinobot cannot follow through and casts his sword aside. Leaving his room, he encounters Rattrap, who does not waste an opportunity to verbally attack him over his recent actions. Essentially, Rattrap has lost whatever amount of trust he had developed toward Dinobot, and he ends it by openly questioning Dinobot's honor and integrity. With this, it seems entirely affirmed for Dinobot that he's lost everything because of the mistakes he's made. He realizes even after receiving forgiveness from the Maximals, the consequences of his choices would remain. But he can take action now by trying to correct that past mistake, and sets off from the base, gun in hand. Meanwhile, Rhinox has been reviewing calculations regarding the transwarp wave from the destruction of the Vok superweapon in Season 1, because it's traveling through space and will reach Cybertron conveniently in the same time period the Maximals come from. Once the wave is detected, it will be possible to retrace its path to the origin point. Rescue from Cybertron now seems certain. The Maximals need only wait for it to arrive. But Megatron has realized the same thing and finds his hand increasingly forced. To this end, Megatron is currently on an expedition with the Rampage, an event which Cheetor is able to observe briefly before the two Predacons open fire and drive him off. Cheetor can't pursue them and signals for assistance. Someone has to find out what they're doing. Dinobot is the only one in range to receive the message and promises to follow up on it. Awaiting the perverse spider to emerge from his lair in order to collect a recently trapped animal, Dinobot manages to ambush Tarantulas. Dinobot wants the information from the Golden Disc and expects Tarantulas to have a lead. However, there are no more copies of the disc other than the original, which, as Tarantulas explains, Megatron keeps on him at all times. But Dinobot is not particularly deterred by this. He was probably expecting to have to confront Megatron for the original one way or another. Tarantulas taunts Dinobot that Megatron is easily miles away, to which Dinobot, who has him at gunpoint, forces him to transform into motorcycle form so that Dinobot can intercept Megatron in time. Back on the lovely nature stroll, Rampage understands that Megatron's days are numbered if the Maximals from Cybertron really do come to rescue Primal's crew. All may not be lost for Megatron as he produces the golden disc and explains it contains information and images from the planet's future. Megatron has led Rampage to the vicinity of a mountain depicted on the disc to conduct a test. He has Rampage fire on the top of the mountain, destroying part of it. This change is soon reflected on the image Megatron has been projecting from the golden disc, proving that the future as recorded can be changed. Dinobot arrived in time to witness the experiment and the realization of all his worst fears. The future can be changed, but that power is currently in Megatron's control, who is poised to use it to rewrite reality. Below them lies a valley from which humanity is destined to arise, and ultimately interfere with, and turn, the great wars in favor of the Autobots. The rest of the Predacons assemble at Megatron's location in preparation for a complete slaughter. Tarantulas goes to attack Dinobot from behind. However, Dinobot is able to best him and leave him incapacitated. Then Dinobot calls on Optimus to send help, but even Optimus tells Dinobot to wait there for his backup. However, it's clear that the entire valley will be burned to the ground and its inhabitants killed long before help gets there. Dinobot knows the time has come for his final battle, acknowledging the irony that just as soon as he finds that his future is not fixed and predetermined, he finds that he has no other choice but to leap into action and engage the Predacons. Dinobot is single-mindedly focused on his mission: stop the Predacons. He takes out each Predacon until only Quickstrike and Megatron remain. But it's taken its toll. His damage is considerable, his weapons are already gone, and by the time he faces down Quickstrike, he doesn't even have the energy for an I-beam blast. However, he defeats Quickstrike by beating him into unconsciousness. He has exhausted himself so severely that he's on the verge of death. His onboard computer urges him to enter preservative stasis lock to minimize his power requirements so that what little remains can maintain his life support. But that itself would be suicide in this situation, and Dinobot cancels the stasis lock protocol. His choice is well made as Megatron rounds a corner to face him. They stand as opposites now, each the last remaining obstacle to the completion of their objectives. Dinobot must stop Megatron to prevent him from changing the future here. Megatron needs Dinobot out of the way to complete his goal and reshape history to his own benefit, a fact that he has no hesitation at holding over Dinobot now. Unarmed, irreparably damaged by the battle, and drained almost to the point of death, nonetheless, Dinobot is ready to take Megatron on. But just as quickly halted as Megatron reveals a prisoner, one of the humans that lived in the valley. Dinobot's concern over the hostage disgusts Megatron, who chastises him for being...
"Oh dear, how positively maximal of you."
Dinobot, in desperation, attacks Megatron with a stick, to which Megatron mocks him.
"Oh, really, Dinobot? A stick? Against a transmetal? I think not. Oh, please, face it, Dinobot. Your old technology, obsolete. What can you possibly do?"
However, Dinobot is a skilled warrior and improvises by using a heavy stone attached to the stick. His newly created hammer is just enough to take Megatron by surprise and allow his hostage to escape. It also causes Megatron to lose hold of the golden disc, which Dinobot catches it, and summons up the very last of his power to blast it into pieces. The Maximals approach in time to force Megatron to retreat. Not only has his plan been ruined, but he's lost his record of the future. Without it, he cannot rewrite reality. He's lost for now. Meanwhile, the Maximals extinguish the fires and discover the dying Dinobot. Even putting him in stasis lock now won't save him. Optimus Prime will reassure Dinobot that he succeeded and saved everyone who lived here, and everyone that would come after them. Dinobot is satisfied and accepts his impending death. After making peace and cheerful jabs with Rat Trap, Dinobot asks only that the Maximals speak truthfully of him to anyone who should ask, letting him be judged by all his actions. Rat Trap salutes his fallen comrade as Dinobot's spark rises from his dead frame. The other Maximals join the salute, with Optimus eulogizing him, saying,
He lived a warrior and died a hero. Let his spark join the Matrix, the greatest of Cybertron.
Sometime later, back at the base, Dinobot's funeral is carried out with the flight-enabled Maximals flying a missing man formation over the funeral pyre, as which is being operated by Rat Trap and Rhinox. Dinobot's body then disintegrates. And back in the valley, the human who had been held by Megatron finds Dinobot's hammer, studying it curiously. First, he's able to use it to break open a coconut, and is amazed by his new discovery. But it's only when he is nearly set upon by a large snake that he truly discovers how powerful this tool can be. He screams in joy, now being able to protect himself and others from danger, and having a new way to get food. Panning up to space, a twinkle of light appears among the stars. So this is sort of an epilogue that they write to follow that up. It says Code of Hero would be the jumping off point between the 5th episode from the end of Season 2. The notions of a fluid timeline would be revisited throughout Season 3. From here forward, it's known that anything the Predacon or Maximal teams could do could have repercussions beyond what they can imagine. In fact, the events of this episode are sort of followed up on later.
What news of the early humans?
Our interrupted attack on the valley caused several tribes to scatter, Royalty. It will be impossible to find them now.
Dinobot's act of destroying the Golden Disc pushed Megatron to take a far more drastic approach of enacting G1 Megatron's plan to kill Optimus Prime, despite Beast Wars Megatron's own fears of what might happen. Dinobot was the 3rd series regular to die. Dinobot's death was by far the most impactful. The others written out of the show for being last year's product, but with Dinobot a lot more went into it. This episode was used to bring a conclusion to his character arc and status. Despite being brought online as a Predacon, he had proven himself beyond the sum of his programming, with honor intact until the end. The violence here was especially high and brutal, considering Dinobot had to storm through the entire Predacon forces on his way to Megatron. Dinobot was heavily injured with gaping holes in his torso, piecing of his body just missing, and even some of the outer portions of his head and face coming apart. The level of violence on paper isn't that much different from what happened to other characters over the course of the series up to that point. While Waspinator injuries were always played for laughs, what made this different was the context and the tone of the setting. Dinobot's battle and eventual death were treated with complete seriousness. Visually, this episode stands out from much of the rest of the series, and there's a good reason for that. Bob Forward, one of the series writers and story editors, actually went and worked with the animators at Mainframe and directed this episode to make sure everything was just right. 1, 2, 3. Season 2 definitely had improved visual quality as compared to the first season. Part of the episode's strength is the writing doing its best to keep your focus, which I think it does well. And it, also to its credit, the ability of Mainframe's animators as they wrung every little bit they could out of the technology they had available at the time. In terms of making the characters expressive, giving them distinct body language and personality that comes through, with or without the dialogue to go with it, there are still shows being made today that don't accomplish these important things as well as Beast Wars did 20 plus years ago. Code of Hero was a highly significant moment in Transformers fiction. Many longtime fans still look to Beast Wars as having contributed heavily to shaping what Transformers fiction was. This is both in terms of inventing ideas like the Matrix or Allspark, then individual sparks, but also for the kind of stories Transformers could be. Long, overarching plots, carefully developed characters that feel like they really live in their world, and solid sci-fi concepts being folded in intelligently. Somewhere along the way it broke free of just being a new licensed production and became something more. Code of Hero really illustrates a lot of these qualities altogether. The Agenda 3-parter at the end of Season 2 often gets held up as the high watermark for the season, if not the series. However, as a standalone episode, Code of Hero really serves to represent what the series is and has to offer. So anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this look back. Again, the link to the article will down below. Other than that, guys, I know it's a little bit of a different video, but I do appreciate you guys tuning in and checking out. So please feel free to check videos on our secondary channel, but also recently on the main channel we had the review of Earthrise, Prowl, and Ironhide. So if you haven't, please show some love on that one. And until next time, guys, maximize.